welcome back to another edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am Sean Meyers. Here is co-host Justin Lowery. New location, new background. Justin, good to see you've moved up in the world. Didn't get a chance to talk to you last week, although we did go over your predictions for Extreme Rules. We'll revisit that, and I think you got a lot to brag about in that regard. We'll talk about the WWE pay-per-view on Sunday, as well as a couple of other big-time wrestling events that took place over the weekend, and then we'll get into the week that was with both Raw and SmackDown and some notable developments there. I mentioned that it was a busy weekend, and I know you caught a lot of wrestling over a 24 to 30-hour span. What was your take on the entire weekend that involved, obviously, Extreme Rules, as well as AEW's Fight for the Fallen on Saturday and Evolve Wrestling's 10th anniversary show?
That there is a lot of wrestling talent out there that a lot of people probably don't know about. If you're a hardcore fan, you could find it, but there's more talent out there than just what you see on your weekly programming on the WWE, and that includes people on the WWE roster.
It's funny you say that because Evolve, I don't know the exact specifics, but there's been a working relationship between that company and WWE. And it was sort of controversial, I guess, in a sense, that WWE was airing this Evolve show to sort of run counter of AEW's event. And people are like, why does WWE need to, put something else on? But it does make sense for Vince McMahon and that company to do that, because if they're in a working relationship, it only benefits them if Evolve grows bigger, and if it maybe hurts the competition in the process and takes some eyes off of it and get some of those fans to watch Evolve. It does make sense, but what was your reaction to that?
Well, let's keep it real. It had nothing to do with helping Evolve grow. There's been rumors about Evolve running a show on there for, the last year. It happened strictly because they wanted to counter-program Fight for the Fallen. I 100% believe that. You can't honestly convince me otherwise. Vince, and you would think the same people that want to watch AEW would probably be the same people interested in that Evolve show. So what he was trying to do was just take viewers away from Fight for the Fallen. Now me, which I have the network, I watched Fight for the Fallen live and then just went back and caught what I wanted to of the Evolve show. That's how I did it.
And I think fans probably could watch either one of them on demand. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yes, especially if you have like Fit TV and stuff like that, like you can go back and watch it. I mean, I watched it on the live free stream on BNR Live.
Right.
So that's how I did it. And then as soon as it was over, I flipped on the network and just caught the on-demand section. So I was able to see both.
We'll get a little bit more into the specifics of that later, but I did want to kind of focus on Extreme Rules. I think when you look at this show going in, you say there's great potential for wrestling. For storyline purposes, for match build, it was okay. Better than Stomping Grounds, but nothing great. That said, I watched start to finish, including the pre-show, and I thought this was a really, really strong show. But for the second time in about 2 months, the ending, which was involving Brock Lesnar, really soured me towards the show overall. That said, I think it was one of the better performances we've seen this year from a WWE event.
Yeah, I mean, even if the card sucks storyline-wise, all those wrestlers are gifted enough that they can go in and give a great match for the most part. I mean, Lesnar winning, we'll get to that. The show itself I thought was, pretty solid. I saw most of it. I got home a little late Sunday night, and as I told you, I drifted off in between sleep and caught bits and pieces. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the way the card was lined up, there were some matches that had potential to be very, very good. Some of them were a little blah. I mean, the Shane McMahon storyline with Taker and Roman's kind of blah. The Seth Rollins, Lacey Evans, Becky Lynch, Corbin was a blah to me.
It's so weird that I'm like, I haven't been excited for Seth Rollins matches in a couple months.
I haven't been excited for Seth Rollins matches in quite some time. And me and you talked about this. I feel since he's returned from his last knee injury, maybe, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, not that he's been awful by any means, but I think he lost a little bit.
I think 2019 has not been good for him. I thought he was pretty good for most of 2018, and that's when he really got in that groove. But I think the last 6 months, it's been tough for him, and I look more so at the opponents that he's had as opposed to his shortcoming.
A lot of time, your championship run has to do with your feuds and your opponents. I mean, basically, all he did was feud with Baron Corbin, and that's all he's feuded with, pretty much, with Baron Corbin. And then Lesnar comes out, and we're right back to where we were pre-WrestleMania, with Seth now challenging Lesnar for the title. So it basically made WrestleMania pretty mute.
That's so frustrating because I was at WrestleMania, and you and I would say probably 80% of the fan base just wanted Lesnar to drop the title once and for all. We thought he was going to drop it 2 WrestleManias ago against Roman. Didn't happen. Roman ultimately beat him, I believe, at SummerSlam. Oh, big sigh of relief. Roman gets sick. Lesnar comes back in, wins the title. Someone else just take it from him. I don't care. Seth, good. He's going to be there every week. He takes it from him at WrestleMania. It was pretty much a joke of a match, to be honest, at WrestleMania, but it served its purpose. Lesnar's done. Might not see him ever again. Definitely won't see him in the title picture. He comes back, wins Money in the Bank. You knew it was a matter of time until he won again. And they have him cash in on Seth Rollins. I get, maybe if they wanted to take the title off of Rollins, but this just seems like a worst-case scenario for me, Justin. I can't get past Brock Lesnar being champion.
Well, I read the reasoning, and I understand the reasoning. Seth didn't have an opponent for SummerSlam. There was nobody high level enough. So the only person could be Lesnar. You can't justify Lesnar fighting for the title when he's holding the briefcase. So what do? Okay, well, let's take the title off Seth. He wins, and let's do the rematch. I mean, there's your match. Because, honestly, he was done with Corbin, who, as a top-level heel on Raw, had the ability to challenge Rollins right now.
I'll say 2 answers.
Okay.
One, do you remember what they did right after WrestleMania with Seth Rollins?
Was that Styles?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with that. He's occupied with the U.S. title.
But what I'm saying is they gave away what could have been a SummerSlam main event.
Yeah, true.
And
true.
And at the time, AJ was a face, so it was a little bit harder to make that match work.
Right.
It would be perfect now, Secondly, the guy who just challenged Kofi Kingston, instead of having Samoa Joe go after the SmackDown title, build him up, give him a big victory, all of a sudden, he's now challenging Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. And he's a natural heel that's that caliber.
Use logic, have the Raw guy go after the Raw title instead of going to SmackDown. Don't use logic. They can't use logic.
What did you think of the interaction between Becky and Corbin, and then Lacey also taking it to Seth Rollins with the cane? Because they really try to avoid stuff like that, but I thought it was kind of refreshing to see those interactions.
Look, I have no problem with it. And intergender wrestling is becoming more of a thing again, especially on the independent scene. TNA, Impact Wrestling, just did an intergender
with Tessa
match.
Blanchard, yep.
Right. I don't have a problem with it. There might be some PC people, but look, everybody knows wrestling is scripted. These are athletes. They're not really hurting women. They used to do this stuff all the time in the Attitude Era. I remember Mae Young being powerbombed through a table by Bully Ray. And no one blinked an eye back then. I have no problem with it. You don't want to overexpose it like anything.
I thought it made the match more interesting, and I think the crowd was kind of into the match, even though it's like, Corbin, Lacey Evans. But that type of interaction, and then they did the double table spot and everything. As bad as Becky and Seth have been chemistry-wise on TV, I thought that match came across pretty good. And Corbin, honest to goodness, has been better than solid over the last couple months in ring.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Corbin, it's not really his fault, the push he got. I don't think he's bad. I think he's adequate in the ring. He does his character and his job well. He's not a main event heel, though.
Right. I would agree.
He's just out of position. Hey, I like it. And if they're going to do this intergender stuff a little bit more, you know who'd be perfect for that? Ronda Rousey. If and when she comes back, that's the woman I would like to see duke it up with a couple men.
Right, and we saw in her first match very briefly her and Triple H, but it was like a 5 second tease and then
Yeah.
so on and so forth. So if you haven't pieced it together yet, Seth and Becky defeat Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans. Sigh of relief. Brock Lesnar comes out. Oh no, he wins the championship from Rollins, and now Brock's the champion again. He was on Raw the next night, but you have to wonder how often he's going to be on TV. But there's an interesting dynamic now, Justin, because the person that is the advocate of Brock Lesnar and a very close friend of Brock Lesnar, I believe in real life, is
Yeah.
now, for all intents and purposes, calling the shots, or at least having a big influence on Raw. What do you think that they do anything different or interesting as a result going forward with Brock?
No, from my understanding is uh, Heyman always had an influence with Brock's storyline and opponents. So I don't think
Well,
that's going to be
man, I would
different.
love to see him give some new guys opportunities because it feels like it's just a cycle over and over
Well,
and over.
I don't think that's his decision. I don't think. I mean, Vince still has the final say. Like, let's keep it real. With the whole Bischoff hasn't even started yet, I guess. But with Heyman, these guys might have a little bit more input, and they might get a segment or two that's theirs. But the buck stops with Vince. Something's not being put on TV unless Vince allows it. Let's. And how many times have we been told this is a restart, refresh, new this, new that, and we get the same old stuff? And I mean, 2 weeks ago, I think we noticed Raw being a little different. Last week went back to basically the same thing we've been seeing. This week, maybe a little bit of Heyman, but not as much as 2 weeks ago. So let's
Right.
wait and see. Vince is still in control, and it's still Vince's baby. What you're seeing now is a little bit more edginess. I mean, with the 24/7, hotel, that was,
That was good. I enjoyed that.
yeah, but that was a little bit more risque, and we heard a couple swear words again on Raw. That's honestly the only difference that I've noticed from this past
Well,
month.
the fact that they don't do like a 20-minute opening monologue and they
Well,
kind of
thank
get
God.
quicker into the
I
wrestling, and
mean, they've only
we
been
didn't
doing that for
we
15
didn't see
years.
Shane on Raw this week. Can you believe that?
That's a plus, but I mean, they got to stop the 2 out of 3 falls. I just can't get into it. Like,
Yeah,
the
it's
whole idea that we need to can't show action during a commercial or something. It makes no sense.
they're going
Why
to
would
realize eventually that's not sustainable.
why do I want to go to a show then? Like, I guess you could say to see the live experience, but okay, so when I'm at a Raw or SmackDown and it cuts to commercial, I'm just watching people stand in the ring, yip de doo, or having Dana Brooke come out and flex for me. Like, that's not going to do much.
Let's kind of wrap up Extreme Rules. Other notable things. A very interesting decision to start the show off with The Undertaker. So they kick off with Taker and Roman against Shane and Drew, and they sort of did a video package, which they like never do before the first match. But they treated this like probably the second or third biggest match of the night, as expected, and it was decent. The Undertaker looked completely different than the last few times we've seen him, and it probably helped that he was working with a couple of younger guys in Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre who were in their prime. And while Shane is not a regular competitor, he did enough. He did his high spots, so on. But more than anything else, it seemed like Undertaker was ticked off and wanted to prove that that match against Goldberg was an aberration. I was entertained by this, and the crowd was super into it. And whether or not we want to see The Undertaker, and I agree with you, I would have rather seen him hang up the boots after he lost to Roman at WrestleMania. He did look a little bit better, and he did get a huge reaction. I would say this had the best reaction the entire night for this fans in Philly.
Yeah, I mean, things that went the Undertaker's way this time. One, he was highly motivated to show people like he wasn't as bad as his last outing. Two, it was a tag match, so he was protected. Three, he was in there, as you said, with Drew McIntyre, who's a current wrestler, younger, able to make him look a little better, and Shane McMahon, who moves around pretty well for being a wrestler slash non-wrestler slash a little bit older himself. I mean, so it just made more sense than putting him in a match with Goldberg. I guarantee you right now, tomorrow, if you tell me that The Undertaker's facing the Great Khali, that ain't going to be a pretty match. I think they have to be smart with the opponents they pick for him and how they use him going forward, because I don't think he has much left in the tank, if anything at all. I understand popping for him because he's a legend. I still do not get these people that when he comes out, just like, oh yeah, like I don't get it. Like he's past his prime. I enjoyed his work, but it's time to let it go.
Well, you know what's coming up on Raw this week, right?
Talk about
That's not a, that to me. I could be wrong, but that to me is the opposite of what Paul Heyman would want to do.
right. Well, from everything that I saw on the internet, this was USA's idea, and WWE had to go with it because they're not happy with the ratings. So they're doing something to, at least for 1 week, I guess, boost the ratings. But here's the thing: I feel like we have these reunion shows or old shows like once every like 4 months now. Like I feel like Raw 25 just happened, or the 1000th episode of this happened, and then
Right.
like it's not even special anymore. I just saw these guys 2 months ago. They're always around WrestleMania time, doing
Right.
appearances. Then I just see these guys in March and April. Like, the only cool thing is maybe like okay, I like Austin comes out, maybe Kevin Owens and him do a backstage segment because there's a correlation with those two characters right now, and maybe Austin talks about using the stunner. But here's the thing: who's going to get stunned by Austin? Austin's going to come out stun somebody who probably shouldn't.
I hope to God it's not Shane McMahon.
He
he cannot take a stunner from Kevin Owens.
No, you know who's going to end up getting it? Like someone like Elias. He comes out, he's kind of a song, and Austin comes out, gives him the finger, and make a lie like here's a beer, Elias. Elias drinking a beer, stuns, and then Austin's giving the finger to the crowd, and everyone's like, yay! And it does nothing for a current superstar, but gives a nice old pop. And some of the guys that we're seeing, like Ric Flair, like, we see Ric Flair enough, right? Like, and actually
Right.
at this point, Ric Flair's health, I sometimes it's coming in the ring. It's like, oh man, the Dudley Boys. Okay, I guess. I mean, I don't miss the Dudley Boys. No offense to the Dudley Boys. I don't know. I don't expect much out of this episode of Raw coming up.
And it seems like a step back from what
Yes.
they've been trying to do. So last match I wanted to touch on at Extreme Rules was another pleasant surprise, and I would say that the Taker match was number one in terms of the crowd response. Number two was Braun Strowman and Bobby Lashley, and these guys, I think when you saw those two were wrestling, you're like, is this really going to be fun? Is it going to be enjoyable? Is it going to be watchable? It was. They played the match perfectly with the rules, going all throughout the arena for the last man standing. And then it had obviously a very fake and scripted spot to finish it. It was something fun and different. I feel like it's very easy to get the crowd into matches. Just like use a weapon or break a table. I'm surprised they don't do stuff like that more often. But this match had it all in terms of that, and they went all through the crowd. This seems like it could be a launching point for Braun Strowman. Although I thought maybe he would carry that into Raw, be a challenger for Brock Lesnar. Didn't happen. That said, Lashley and Strowman, it's over, but I think they got what they wanted out of this feud.
Yeah, that reminded me. That was better than it probably should have been. I forget the pay-per-view, but you would remember this probably. Mark Henry and the Big Show. Was it at a pay-per-view that they actually had a match that no one really wanted to see and ended up having like an incredible match?
Right. Yep.
And I forget the pay-per-view.
I want to say Survivor Series.
Yeah.
I think like Big Show tried like a missile drop kick or something like that.
Yeah, like it was like, oh, these guys can't work too well. This match is gonna suck.
I want to say someone else in the Big Show had like a shockingly good match too, and maybe Roman. I want to say like Roman in the Big Show, where like you just don't expect it, and all of a sudden these big guys like show what they have that like smaller wrestlers can't do, and that's what Strowman and Lashley did.
Yeah, I mean Lashley's a very great athlete. I mean, there's no denying his athletic ability. He just has a personality of a wall. I mean, that was always Lashley's problem. He has no charisma, in my opinion. Great athlete, great look. He just don't give that guy a mic. And I mean, Strowman. I mean, he's just been hurt by poor booking decisions. He was probably the hottest guy in the company 2 years ago, and they blew it because they wanted Roman. And does Strowman get back up to that popularity again? Probably not, but he could probably be elevated a little bit more than he is now.
And it seems like Heyman supposedly is in his corner.
And it came out today. He 4-year deal, so he's not going away anytime soon.
So let's look at the predictions for Extreme Rules. Now, the last show, Stomping Grounds, I was perfect, and that's the first time that anyone on this show with the predictions was 100%. Justin, you were darn close. Here's our picks, and here's how they turned out. Justin, you missed only 1 of 10 matches, so you go 90%. And that is pretty darn good. You were off on Daniel Bryan and Rowan retaining the SmackDown tag titles, as was I. And then the 2 matches we differed on, you got both of them right. AJ Styles defeating Ricochet, Revival retaining against the Usos. We were both correct on Becky and Seth, Kofi, Taker and Roman, Bayley, Strowman, Aleister Black, and Drew Gulak. Is it a case of it again being kind of predictable?
Yeah, I mean, it was Extreme Rules. The way it was going, I felt like AJ was going to win because he had the club in his corner. So I felt like
that's such a weird, like, that's what, the 5th or 6th time that title has changed hands in a couple months.
Yeah, and that title changes hands a lot. So does the IC title, and those secondary titles seem that.
Which, by the way, the IC title did change on the pre-show on a match that was announced officially that day.
Right, and before, and clearly we did our predictions before we knew that match was going to be, on the card, or we would have made our picks for that.
Same with Kevin Owens and Ziggler that was thrown together hours before.
Yes, so it was a little predictable. I mean, they were never going to give Lacey and Corbin the titles and this and that. I mean, I was a little curious that Bryan and Rowan dropped the titles, but I guess they have, again, I don't think the New Day need another title reign. But unless you wanted to give everybody New Day belts at the same time, okay. But again, I've seen that.
Right. So let's jump into Monday Night Raw, and we'll kind of go quickly through Raw and SmackDown here. But for Raw, to me, the biggest thing, and certainly what created the most buzz on Twitter and on social media, by the way, follow us, 5-Star Pod Wrestle on Twitter, it was the new debut of Bray Wyatt, and it looked awesome. The crowd loved it. My only issue is I wanted it to be even more of a big impact, and I was desperately hoping and praying that maybe he did something at the end of Extreme Rules to prevent Brock Lesnar, or maybe he was the one that came and attacked Seth Rollins. Something more than just beating up Finn Balor, who really at this point is sort of an afterthought. And I don't know what they're going to do next, because the rumor is Finn Balor is going to be off TV for some while. We might not see him against Bray Wyatt anytime soon, but at least you get Bray Wyatt on TV. It's pretty clear that he is going to be a heel, and he has this new look that's pretty cool. I don't know how it's going to translate to him working in the ring and his matches and his promos in front of the crowd, but there's definitely some excitement about Bray Wyatt for the first time in a while.
Okay, not to be a Debbie Downer, but so let me start first. I love his look, love the mask, love the outfit, love his look.
Much needed from changing up stuff, right?
Change your character. He's still a mysterious, type of scary, character. But here's the thing. Bray Wyatt has been, gone and come back, 3 or 4 different times. Every time the internet, everybody gets all excited, geeked up, and 3 months later, everyone's on the internet going, man, does Bray need to change? This is, blah, blah, blah. So here's the thing. Love the look, love the debut. I'm into it. I love his segments, but I need to see it first. I have no faith that they're, have an idea of what to do with this man. So let's see what happens. Who's he going to feud with? What are they going to, or is he going to lose? Is he going to win? I mean, every big time feud he's ever been in, he's lost.
What do you think they should do with him?
Well, first off, like you said, okay, apparently that was the way to write off Finn from TV. Debuting, it would have been so much cooler if he would have did something like, how about wait till SummerSlam? Say Lesnar beats Rollins again. Wouldn't it be badass to have the lights go off and he do that to Lesnar?
Well, that's why I was saying even at the end of Extreme Rules, to make sure Lesnar I didn't want Lesnar to get the title, and I thought, man, that would...
Lesnar to win, give him something big to start out with. Not, okay, we're not going to see Finn for 2 months or something. Who's he going to feud with? Is he just going to have promos and just not wrestle for another 2 months, and then eventually we're going to okay, same old, not doing anything, or he needed to do, like, if he would have did it to Roman Reigns, that's a big name, but he would have to beat Roman Reigns. You can't
Right.
have Roman Reigns then come back and beat him, because then everything you tried building up the last couple of months is all for naught again. He has to, whatever he
And
does,
Roman does seem like that could be an option, right?
well, he's free right now, right? I would assume him and Shane McMahon are now done, so he's free up for a feud, but you can't have Roman go over. You just can't. I mean, it's going to kill everything you've been building.
So we talked a little bit about Seth Rollins is going after the title after he just dropped it. Money in the Bank was pointless, really. You could have given it to someone who needed it. Instead, we're right back to where we were before WrestleMania. So Seth wins this 10-man battle royal, throws out Randy Orton last. We'll get to Orton shortly. But there was another title match set for SummerSlam on the Raw side on Monday. This one, it's a new match, but it's kind of a peculiar one, as Becky Lynch will face Natalya. And I guess you could say, all right, well, it's not Alexa Bliss. We didn't want to see that because Alexa just challenged for a title. Carmella and Naomi were also in the match, and they really haven't been doing anything. But neither has Natalya. So first, your thoughts on Natalya winning. Second, your take on the match, which got very negative response from the fans in attendance. And I think there's more than just the in-ring work that led to that.
The match was boring. I don't blame the fans for doing that. And here's the thing. I saw Alexa, come on Twitter and blah, 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 you shouldn't be treated like that. It's disrespectful. And people like, you wanted a women's revolution, and doing that during a women's match is disrespectful. Well, here's the thing. They do it to men's matches, too. So they're treating you just like the men. There's men's matches that get boring all the time. Seth Rollins has come out when his matches have been kind of poo-pooed on.
Which, that happened to him and Ambrose, right?
Yeah.
In, December, I think.
Yeah. So I don't like wrestlers coming out and, ragging on the fans, because, one, the fans paid their money to come see you. And if they're not into a match, they'll let you know it. If you can't take it, then you probably shouldn't be a professional wrestler. It was boring. There was no drama to it. There was no reason for it. Honestly, I don't think there was no one really root for in that match.
Well, I get that part. I think I told you this. I didn't think it was terrible in the ring. I thought it was passable. So to me, saying this is awful is a bit much.
Well, here's the thing. Like you just said, it was passable. When there's no interest in the storyline, or there's no one you want to win, you need better than passable. You need to do some stuff to get the crowd engaged, and it just didn't happen. Alexa is probably the biggest star of those four.
By far, yes.
Like you just said, she just challenged, and actually, logically, she didn't even deserve to be in that match. Somebody else should have been in that match. But you have her, Naomi, and I haven't even seen her. She's off and on TV here and there. Carmella runs around with R-Truth, and Natalya, I don't know about you or a lot of other people, but she gets on my nerves. I'm not a fan.
Is it just the Canadian thing with SummerSlam being in Toronto? I don't see any other reason for this.
Yeah, I don't know, because Becky's supposed to be a face. Natalya's a face.
Until she cut that after-match promo to give a little fire to it, I guess.
Natalya can't. She's horrible on the mic. She's bland. Total Divas has made me hate her. She's just annoying. I hate her cat ears. I hate her. So, it also tells you, it's funny. The WWE has the most talented women, I think, in the world. Their women roster stacked, but yet there's a void on the main roster.
It is, but so they've gone away from Charlotte, and trust me, I think that was much needed.
Yes.
Sasha hasn't been there. Ronda Rousey hasn't been there. So they've been operating with basically three of their top stars gone for the past 3 months. Three of probably the top 6, I think you would say. And then they're also kind of using some of the talent poorly. Now they've done a nice job with Bayley and obviously Lacey Evans, so on, but other women who are very good have just been underutilized, like an Asuka, and we'll kind of talk about her role. But imagine if it had been Becky and Asuka again, people would be really into that match. It's just the talent's there, they're not using it as well as they could be, and I think they need some reinforcements.
You might as well brought up Baszler. and have her make a surprise appearance holding the NXT title up in the air.
Her and Becky at SummerSlam would be big time.
Yeah, right. Why? That would be a bigger match.
And it's built in a storyline because, hey, my buddy Ronda Rousey, you chased her off.
Completely built-in storyline, like you said. Absolutely, it would have been way more entertaining than Natalia. That's for sure.
So, I don't really like the SummerSlam matches that were made on Raw. I thought SmackDown did a better job. The one that really jumps out is for Kofi Kingston's WWE title. He has moved on from Dolph Ziggler. Well, he's moved on from Kevin Owens to Dolph Ziggler. He defeated Samoa Joe. Very quick feuds for Kofi, really, when you think about it. He's now on his fourth challenger. It's Randy Orton, or at least it looks like it's going to be Randy Orton. We're heading in that direction. Orton got the victory on SmackDown in a six-man match. You talk about built-in storylines. There is certainly one here, and Randy Orton has he has had a resurgence in his career because 5 years ago people were sick and tired of him. He was very boring. He now is like enough of a veteran status, but still good enough and near his prime that he just gets a great reaction and people pop for everything he does. He was the fan favorite on Monday as opposed to Seth Rollins when it came down to those two. A night later, it looks like he's in position for another title match, this time on SmackDown. He and Kofi, it seemed like Kofi would be dropping the title around SummerSlam. Does it happen with Randy Orton as the guy taking the title from him?
That's a good question. I mean, I think with Orton, there's always that possibility. We do have SmackDown moving to Fox coming up here in October. We're, 3 months away from that? 2.5? I think it's early October it's moving. So, is Fox gonna want Kofi as the champion, coming into that? I don't know. I mean, Randy Orton was probably a bigger name in the mainstream. I don't know how big his name is in the mainstream outside of wrestling. He's done some WWE.
I would say he's probably top 5 of the current guys in the company, right?
Right. If you ask somebody on the street, name 5 WWE wrestlers, they would get him. I think more people would get him than Kofi Kingston.
Right, no doubt.
So, I don't know. There is that looming. Me and you always thought around SummerSlam is when Kofi would drop the belt.
And I would consider that a good run for him. Mania to SummerSlam.
Yeah, all summer, basically holding the title. The question is, though, you hear the rumors that Orton's dealing with a little bit of a neck injury, and that's why he hasn't been seen much. Are they going to give him the title, or is he going to get a reign? But you would think they would want to go into that with a face as champion. So if Orton does win it, is it short-lived? Does it transition the belt to somebody else?
It seems like Roman or Lesnar would be the likely people to represent SmackDown when it goes to Fox, right?
Yes. I don't know how much of the fans would care for that, but I could see Fox executives and the WWE wanting that for sure, yes.
So Orton gets that victory. It looks like he's headed forward, but one of his partners was Elias, and Elias got a nice little rub. He was talking during the open forum, which was a cool idea that turned out to be kind of underwhelming as a segment. And actually, this match came about because Elias and the New Day were going at it, breaking some news here. He's going to be getting a new theme song. Looks like he could be a guy that could be in for a push. And it really started on Sunday because he clobbered The Undertaker with the guitar. You have to figure Undertaker, probably him and Sting is far-fetched at this point. If they don't do that, Elias maybe has jumped for next in line because it seems like McIntyre's kind of out of the equation. What do you expect from Elias in weeks and months to come?
I have no idea. I don't know if WWE has any idea. I feel like they change hour to hour. It's I don't know. Like there's times you feel like they're going somewhere with them, and then it's like, okay, we're just gonna keep. I mean, the good news is for him, he's on TV on a weekly basis.
And I'm sure you've noticed they've kind of changed him to be a little bit more straightforward. He's not doing like the same shtick. He's not doing the in the ring, and that's why he is going to be getting new music because he's going to be making more traditional entrances and probably wrestling a lot more going forward.
Well, that's good. I mean, he needs to wrestle more. I mean, we've seen enough of him in the character. To get to the next level, he needs to wrestle more and actually have an actual feud with somebody. And, we've seen him have a couple pay-per-view matches, but they're like one and done. It's time to act, and be a storyline where he's like the actual actual figure, not like a Shane McMahon ladder.
Right. I mean, Elias and Roman had a match, but like no one really thought it was Elias versus Roman. It was like Roman versus Shane McMahon's entity.
Right. Right. Like he needs something on his own to stand on his own 2 feet.
Couple women that are trying to stand on their own 2 feet, but they're not getting much of an opportunity are Asuka and Kairi Sane. They did get a title match, and I know you said, like, what's even going on with that storyline leading into SmackDown? They got their match, DQ, or count out finish, rather. I mean, that's kind of like the Iconics thing, right? I mean, they didn't want to have a real match, so it makes sense. It extends this, and hopefully you get a real feud out of it. And then I actually thought it looked pretty cool when the Iconics just got destroyed by Kairi Sane and Asuka afterwards, because these are 2 very legitimate female wrestlers, and they could be maybe 2 of the top 3, definitely 2 of the top 5 in WWE right now in terms of their in-ring work. I don't really like the pairing with Paige, but I look at these 2 as like they should be prominent figures, and if they could go forward with this storyline, I don't know that the titles mean much, but if they're on TV every week and wrestling, that's a good sign. But at this point, can we really count on that?
Look, the women tag team titles are basically a joke. They've never been really given any time to shine.
Are we going to need these 2 women, the Kabuki Warriors, to split up to really have an impact, do you think?
Yeah, well, look, I understand putting them together, and I get why Paige is their manager, because none of them speak very good English.
Right. So it just seems like a weird pairing to me. I don't really like it.
Extremely weird. But it gives something for Paige to do since she can't wrestle anymore. So, I mean, I get what they're trying to do, but it is a very weird pairing. Going back real quick to, like, Raw and the women's, having trouble, Asuka or Kairi Sane could easily be in a feud with Becky Lynch for the title, just one-on-one. But, I mean, they ruined Asuka in a way, and Kairi, she hasn't had an opportunity to be a single star in the main roster. But I actually love the Iconics. I love their skit. I think they're amazing.
Do you love their matches, though? Because I think that's the drawback with them.
Right. Their matches aren't that very good because they're not very good wrestlers.
Hey, Kayla!
Yeah. You're gonna be joking me. I can't do an Australian accent. But I think they're brilliant in what they do with the promos and their stick. I think it's amazing. It makes me laugh. I enjoy it 100%. I don't mind seeing them on my TV every week. Like, I enjoy. If they're on, I want to catch their segment.
That's what WWE is supposed to really be, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be the best in-ring stuff if you have entertainers and good characters and stories.
Right. Now, they definitely lack in the wrestling department. Absolutely. At least they're a legit tag team. I'll say that. I do expect them to drop the titles at SummerSlam to, Asuka and Kairi, but I love those 2. Those 2 just crack me up. I can watch your internet clips all day long.
I think I've sent you a few of those. We're going to finish up by talking about AEW quickly, because I know you watched that and I want to get your feedback on that. But before we jump into that, Justin, it's time for our favorite weekly segment, and I'll let you take the lead on this one. We've been, for about a month now, giving suggestions on very simple, basic ways that WWE can improve, and improve pretty quickly. And we've gone and given some different ideas. So I want to get your take on a very simple way that WWE can improve its product.
Make wins and losses matter. So, for instance, this past Monday Night Raw, we saw Alexa Bliss in a 4-way for a #1 contendership. She never should have been in there. She lost the night before, so she's in the back of the line. Somebody else should have been, in that spot. We saw the Battle Royal. Cesaro was in there. Love Cesaro. I have no problem with him being in there. But he lost at Extreme Rules to Black. Why is Black not in there and Cesaro is? Stuff like that. Things make winning and losing matter. Because why should we care then if somebody wins or loses a match? If you're just going to give us what you want anyway, it doesn't matter.
And my suggestion is to kind of close up some of the logic loopholes within the matches. And these are things that if you watch each and every week, you'll see almost without exception, you will see at least one failed logic in a match every single week. And I go back to some things like the mixed tag elimination on Raw a couple weeks ago that made absolutely no sense. There was no way that match should have ever been made. But even more simple things like when you have a triple threat match, okay, there's no DQs. So why don't you just grab a weapon and destroy your opponents right off the bat? Maybe change it so that if you do something that would be a disqualification in a regular match, that person is kicked out of the triple threat and it goes down to a one-on-one with the other two. Or the Royal Rumble. Why would you ever get in the ring in the Royal Rumble if you could just skip your turn and come in whenever you want? If you don't come into the ring before the next entrant does, you're out of the match. We saw this with Becky Lynch this past January where she ultimately won the Royal Rumble, taking the spot of someone else. It makes no sense. They need to close up these things. And I understand we're always going to suspend belief because it's professional wrestling. But very obvious things like that just boggle my mind. Also, you mentioned the Iconics. They got counted out on SmackDown. Why wouldn't the champions always get counted out or disqualified if there's no ramifications? Maybe make it a stipulation. If you get counted out or disqualified the first time, there's an automatic rematch in which you would lose the titles if you get counted out or disqualified again. Close up the loopholes and logic in the matches in WWE. Seems like a pretty easy idea, right?
Things aren't always easy in that creative department.
So I would say, what's this? The third, technically, pay-per-view for All Elite Wrestling took place this past week. Fight for the Fallen on Saturday. It was just a few weeks after Fyter Fest, and I'm going to be honest, the names themselves, they need to switch it because they're too similar, too close together. But that's a very minor thing. It was another free show, and I know you said you probably thought it was the worst so far, and I saw opinions ranging from the worst to the best, even though it seems like the consensus was it certainly wasn't as good as Double or Nothing. Your takeaways and anything notable that you saw from this show?
Well, one, the show was for charity, victims of gun violence. So I wasn't really done to be making a profit because they kind of check to people at the end, blah, blah, So that was nice. Instead of going to Saudi Arabia and taking blood money, these guys are actually raising money for charity.
That's something that WWE honestly should do more of. Like, they do the tribute to the troops, but, like, yeah. I know they do Make-A-Wish stuff, but actual shows, like, come on, that's a good recipe to follow.
Why not do a show for charity? That's a good PR move.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you saw any video from the event or anything, but the stage, the venue, it was cool. It was like a concert venue, like an outdoor, like in the Pittsburgh area. First Niagara, Star Lake for some people. It reminded me of Nitro back when they did like Spring Break. So that vibe was really cool. I enjoyed the vibe. My dad was actually over, caught some of it, and actually liked the look of it.
I think the last ever Nitro was sort of like that, right? Is that okay?
It was cool. I was into it. I liked it. They had some production issues. At a point during the show, like closed caption came up on the screen, and not only just words, but just weird symbols like we were being hacked. And
Jeez.
It went on for it went on for like 6 to 7 minutes. And originally I thought, did I hit something? Did I sit on the remote? Did I do something? And I couldn't get it off, so I actually went on Twitter and realized, oh, this just ain't me. This is everybody. And it went away, and I mean, that doesn't look good, when you're watching a show and, your screen's full of, like, just symbols and stuff. Like, that's a bad look. I don't know if that's AEW's fault, the streaming being our live. Like, I don't know if it's their fault, but that wasn't a good look. Their pre-show still needs some work. A pre-show should be something to make you want to buy the show.
Right.
And I don't feel like they're hitting that yet. I'm not really into the whole librarian angle. I think that's a dead angle. I think they really need to drop that as soon as they can. That being said, usually about 15 of the minutes out of the hour of the pre-show is worth it. The show itself, I thought was pretty solid. There's still tons of botches in the women's matches. I sent you a clip of Britt Baker legitimately tagging the wrong person. Now, it I guess she suffered a severe concussion. Like,
I heard that too, and I think that's actually worse than her just messing up badly, because there has to be some real concerns about the medical procedure in place for this company, between Cody getting split open with a chair shot and then Britt Baker apparently staying in a match where she was horribly concussed.
Here's the thing with that. Like, I'm not gonna blast them because, one, I had no idea. It wasn't like she was woozy at all. There was nothing in the match I went, oh man, Britt looks like bad. WWE has had issues with people with.
It was the Liv Morgan and Brie Bella thing that became a big story.
Knocked her out, clearly knocked unconscious. The ref didn't notice it. Brie's still trying to pick her up and move her. So, and then Brie actually went, and then Liv actually went back in, continued to do some moves before she was pulled out. So, I'm not saying like AEW is, dangerous or whatever. But that, I mean, it's concussion. It happened. Apparently, it was bad enough where she was on hour by hour observation. So, I mean, hopefully, she's okay. So, I want to kind of take some what I said to you back about her, since she was, clearly in a fog. But the women need to get better. There were some botches. There were some other mistimed spots that took away from what I would say were pretty damn great matches that you're like, oh man, they timed that wrong. Which the style of wrestling that they're doing, it's going to lend itself to more botching. I mean, it is. It's more high risk. You're going to have issues.
Does it feel too much like an indie show to you?
If it's indie, it's high, like, I mean, high valued indie, because the production, I mean, the stage and everything, it's better than your typical indie.
Right.
They're still working out kinks. And to me, like Fight for the Fallen, it was a pay-per-view per se, but it was more like an in-your-house back in the day. Like,
right.
The next one is key.
That's All Out in Chicago.
Right. Double or Nothing was important. The next two were just okay shows. And two, a lot of these shows so far, you're not following storylines. Like, they're just having matches. There's not like an actual storyline happening. They're just giving you matches with guys you kind of want to see in the ring together, and there's a little storyline progressing. But now I think you're seeing it go full steam ahead, because whatever you get coming out of this show on the 31st of August is going to lead right into their weekly TV show, like the beginning of October. So, I mean, we're going to see the first champion crowned in AEW, which I'm going to assume is going to be Chris Jericho, which I don't know how I feel about that. I get it, but I don't know if I like it. It looks like we're going to get Moxley and Kenny Omega, Shawn Spears versus Cody. I mean, the card is setting up nicely. It looks like it's going to be the Lucha Brothers in a ladder match against the Young Bucks. So off the bat, that match looks like that could steal the freaking show.
Right.
The card's lining up to be really good. They do need to get better production-wise. They had timing issues. I don't know if you read or saw at the end, the Bucks were putting over Dustin and Cody Rhodes. And then all of a sudden music hit, and they went, huh? And they went, oh, sorry, we must be running late. All right, let's get out this check. And I'm like, oh, that looks bad. And then, like, Omega comes out, and they're like, we don't even know if we're still on the air, but because it was free here in America, but it was pay-per-view all other countries. Right. So they got to work out on their timing. When they did All In last year, they had timing issues. If you recall, the main event had to be, like, cut by half, and they barely made it before they got off the air, the finish of the match. So there are kinks they got to work out. To me, it was definitely their worst show. If you're saying it was their best show, you're clearly then just blinded by AEW is the greatest thing ever.
Right.
I want them to succeed. I think they will. They're not on WWE's level, and I don't think they need to be at this point in time. They're a new company starting out, working out kinks, but I think they're going in the right direction.
Well, hopefully our show continues to go in the right direction. That's going to do it for this week. I want to remind everyone again, follow us on Twitter, 5-Star Pod Wrestle, Instagram, 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all the old videos. Make sure you turn on notifications as well, as we'll continue to do some live shows here and there in the future. For Justin Lowery, Sean Meyers signing off. We'll catch you again next week It'll be right here on the 5 Star Podcast of Wrestling.